Welcome to Truthful Manipulation. In a world where truth is bent, facts are framed, and influence is too often used without conscience, this podcast stands for something different. I'm Dave Kelsey, along with H. Daniel Mujahid, and together we expose manipulation, defend integrity, and help you see clearly in a world determined to confuse you. Welcome to Truthful Manipulation. I'm Dave.
And I'm Daniel.
And today we're asking questions that's bigger than politics, bigger than party, bigger than slogans, and bigger than all the noise we're being fed every single day.
Today's question is this: what would the perfect vision of the United States look like as we move forward for all of its citizens?
Not for some of its citizens, not for the loudest, not for the richest, and not for the best connected, and not for the most protected, but for all its citizens.
That means this conversation has to go deeper than campaign lines, deeper than outrage, deeper than tribalism, and deeper than the manipulation that keeps people fighting each other, while the foundation underneath this country of ours keeps cracking.
Because if we're honest, a lot of people aren't really being asked to imagine a better America. They're being trained to fear one. When people stop believing a shared future is possible, manipulation takes over.
So today, we're going to slow it down. We're going to build the discussion piece by piece. What would a truly healthy United States look like? What would it feel like? What and who would it protect? What and who would it reward? What and who would it refuse to tolerate? And most importantly, what kind of people would we have to become to help build it?
Daniel, I think one of the problems we have in the country is that a lot of people hear a question like this and immediately think of policy. And policy matters. Of course it does. But before policy comes vision, and before vision comes values, and before values comes truth. If a nation can't tell the truth about itself, it can't build a future that serves everybody.
That's exactly right, Dave. A perfect vision of the United States is not something that is in the fantasy world where nobody struggles, nobody disagrees, and nobody gets hurt. That's not real. What's real is a nation that creates conditions where people can live with dignity, pursue honest opportunity, and be protected under the law, and know that their humanity is not negotiable.
A perfect vision is not perfection. It's a direction. The question isn't whether America can become flawless. The question is whether America can become honest enough to become better.
And that means we have to ask, what kind of country do we want to be when the cameras and the lights are off, when the speeches end, when the flags stop waving, when nobody's clapping? Because patriotism without principle can become branding, and branding without truth becomes manipulation.
A healthy United States moving forward for all its citizens would be a country where image is no longer allowed to outrun reality, where leaders can't keep selling hope with one hand while stripping dignity with the other, where citizens just don't consume slogans, they demand substance.
And maybe that's where we start. Not with the left, not with the right, but with this. What does it mean for a society to be worthy of its people?
Let's begin at the core. A perfect vision of the United States would be a country where truth is not treated like a luxury item, not optional, not disposable, not convenient only when it helps your side. Truth would matter in government. Truth would matter in media. Truth would matter in education. Truth would matter in business. And truth would matter in the home.
Because when truth collapses, everything becomes easier to manipulate. History gets rewritten. People get scapegoated. Facts become opinions. Lies become strategy. And confusion becomes power. A nation drowning in distortion cannot stay free, not for long.
A better America would not be where everybody agrees on everything. That's impossible. It would be one where there's still enough shared commitment to truth that disagreement doesn't destroy the country. That means evidence still matters. That means facts still matter. That means integrity still matters.
And let's look at it this way. Truth is not cruelty. Truth is not domination. Truth is not humiliation. Truth, in its highest form, is the thing that gives people solid ground to stand on. And one of the reasons so many people are exhausted today is because the ground keeps shifting underneath us.
They don't know who to trust. They don't know what's real. They don't know whether the outrage is real, whether the crisis is real, whether the promise is real, whether the hope is real. And the uncertainty makes people vulnerable.
So if you and I are painting the perfect picture, the perfect vision, here's one of the major features that has to include a United States where truth is protected culturally, not just legally, where lying to the public is not seen as clever, it's seen as corrosive, where manipulation is exposed, not rewarded, where integrity becomes aspirational again.
Imagine that. Imagine if children grew up watching adults who actually believed that character was not weakness. Imagine if they saw institutions correct themselves without spinning everything. Imagine if we taught young people that being wrong is not fatal, that refusing truth is. A country can survive mistakes. It can't survive permanent dishonesty.
Now let's move from truth to dignity. Because if this country is going to move forward for all its citizens, then dignity cannot be selective. It can't be conditional. It can't be something that some people are born closer to while others spend their entire lives trying to prove they deserve it. A better America would be a place where every citizen feels seen under the law, heard in the culture, and valued in the economy and the community.
That's important because a lot of people have been told that America is about opportunity, but then they live in systems that grind them down, ignore them, or use them. And what's worse is sometimes they get told that their suffering is their fault while the systems remain untouched.
And that was one of the oldest forms of manipulations or tricks that there is. Make people blame themselves for conditions designed to keep them struggling.
In the perfect vision of a nation, people aren't reduced to labor units, not reduced to voting blocks, not reduced to demographics. and not reduced to content for somebody else's outrage machine. They are recognized as human beings with sacred worth.
And dignity, it shows up in practical ways. It means work that pays enough to live. It means neighborhoods that are safe. It means schools that don't silently communicate to children that their future has already been priced low. It means elders not being forgotten. It means veterans not being paraded and then abandoned. It means people with disabilities being built into the vision. It means orphans matter and that they are not just added as an afterthought.
It means mothers and fathers being able to raise children without feeling like every month is a cliff edge. It means people being able to get sick without immediately entering financial panic. It means citizens being able to age with dignity. A great nation is not measured only by how high the powerful can climb. It's measured by how low the vulnerable are allowed to fall.
That line matters, Dave, because, too often we celebrate excellence while quietly tolerating cruelty. We, Americans, we admire success, but yet we ignore exploitation. We, the people, we applaud innovation while we excuse dehumanization. A better America would stop pretending those trade-offs are necessary.
And let's say this as plainly as we can. If progress for one group depends on permanent humiliation for the other, that's not national strength. That's national decay dressed up as victory. This episode of Truthful Manipulation is brought to you by our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. If you've ever looked at the world and asked, how do I stay awake in a culture built to confuse me? This book was written for you. It's about learning to recognize manipulation, understand influence, and still choose truth, ethics, and integrity in the middle of the noise. And if you want something that challenges you, sharpens you, and helps you see the game without becoming part of it, get your copy of Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. And keep listening to Truthful Manipulation Podcast for weekly conversations that refuse to let the fog win. Now back to the show. Now let's talk about opportunity. Because one of the biggest gaps in America is the gap between what's promised and what's actually reachable. The perfect vision of the United States would be a place where opportunity is just not a story well told. It's a structure we built.
And that means people should not have to start from the same place just to deserve a fair chance. It also means that a fair chance cannot just exist in theory. It has to exist in reality, in wages, in education, in access, in transportation, in health, in law, in housing, in entrepreneurship, and even in second chances.
But let's be honest. Too many Americans have been handed a dream without the ladder. And then, when they can't reach it, they get told they didn't work hard enough. Now, hard work matters, personal responsibility matters, and discipline matters. But those truths also can be used manipulatively when they are spoken without acknowledging structural barriers.
Exactly. A better America tells the truth about both. It honors effort and it confronts obstacles. It celebrates discipline and it dismantles needless barriers. It believes in individual responsibility without pretending institutions have no responsibility at all. A nation becomes dishonest when it praises resilience, especially while refusing to repair what keeps breaking people.
In America, we should be building. Every child would grow up feeling like they have a real shot, not a photo op shot, not a campaign speech shot, a real shot, a real path to literacy, a real path to skill, a real path to ownership, and a real path to contribution.
And a real path back when they mess up too, Dave, huh? Because no nation can move forward for all of its citizens if failure becomes a life sentence for some and a learning experience for others. A better country understands accountability, yeah, but it also understands redemption.
That's big, Daniel. No, Daniel, that's huge. Because the perfect vision of the United States would not just be a nation of freedom, it would be a nation of possibility. And possibility depends on access.
Let's ask the audience a few things here. When you think of the American dream, do you still believe it is accessible to the average citizen? Or has it become something people reference nostalgically because they are no longer trusting that it can be reached?
That's not a rhetorical question, Daniel. That's the heartbeat of this conversation. But when enough people stop believing that their effort can turn into stability, hope starts to rot. And when hope rots, manipulators move in. They offer easy enemies, easy blame, easy slogans, easy rage. Broken opportunity creates fertile ground for dangerous manipulation.
If America is going to move forward for all its citizens, education has to be one of the pillars. And I don't just mean schooling, I mean education in the fullest sense, teaching people how to think, not merely what to repeat.
That there's crucial because the perfect vision of this country would not fear educated citizens. It would need them, it would cultivate them, and it would protect them from propaganda, not feed them into it.
Education should produce discernment, curiosity, courage, humility, historical understanding, media literacy, financial literacy, civic literacy, moral reasoning, not just test scores, not just compliance, not just memorization.
But a better America would raise up young people who know how power works, who understand how narratives shape belief, who can identify manipulation when they hear it, who can disagree without dehumanizing, who can question authority without worshiping chaos.
Yep. And that includes being honest about history, not weaponizing it, not erasing it, not romanticizing it. A mature nation can tell its children the truth about its greatness, about the truth about its failures, without even collapsing. In fact, that honesty is part of greatness. A country that cannot teach the truth about its past will keep repeating it in its future.
Education should not be a sorting mechanism for who gets to matter. It should be an empowerment mechanism for everybody. And in the country we ought to be building, teaching would be respected, students would be challenged, parents would be engaged, and learning would be linked to purpose.
Let's ask the audience another question. What would happen if we taught every young person in this country how manipulation works before the world had a chance to use it on them. Let me ask another question to the audience. What would have happened if we taught every American and every young person in this country how manipulation worked before the world had a chance to use it on them? What would have happened if we made truth-seeking part of the national character?
I'll tell you what would happen. We'd raise fewer followers of fog and more builders of clarity. Now let's move to something deeply practical. A better United States would give people more peace of mind. That sounds simple, but think about how rare that's becoming. Too many people in this country live in a state of constant strain, medical strain, financial strain, emotional strain, relational strain, safety strain, that kind of strain that slowly empties people out.
And when people are chronically exhausted, chronically anxious, chronically afraid, they become easier to govern through fear rather than through trust. That's not accidental. An unstable population is easier to manipulate than a grounded one.
So, the perfect vision of America would include systems that lower unnecessary panic. People would not be one emergency away from collapse. They should not have to choose between medication and groceries. They shouldn't have to pray that a broken car, a broken bone, or a broken paycheck doesn't unravel their whole household.
This is not about dependency. This is about stability. There's a difference. A strong nation creates conditions where citizens can stand stronger, where families can breathe, where healthcare is reachable, where mental health is taken seriously, where addiction is addressed with truth and accountability. Yes. And also with humanity.
Where public safety is real, not theatrical. Real. Safe neighborhoods, safe schools, safe streets. The law enforcement that understands its legitimacy depends not only on authority, but on trust. Order without justice becomes oppression. Justice without order becomes chaos. A healthy nation must protect both.
And peace of mind also comes from belonging, from knowing your country has not forgotten you, from knowing your pain does not make you invisible, from knowing you are not alone in the burden of trying to survive. This matters because the country is not only an economy, it's a moral environment.
You go ahead and.
We want to take a moment to thank you for being part of the Truthful Manipulation community. If these conversations challenge you, sharpen you, and help you see the world with more clarity, share this podcast with someone who is tired of the lies, tired of the spin, and tired of watching truth get negotiated away. And if you haven't yet picked up the copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By, please do so. Because in a world where influence is everywhere, the real question is not whether you're being shaped. The question is whether you can recognize what is shaping you. Stay with us. We're just getting started. And now, back to the show. A perfect vision of the United States must include justice, and justice that people can trust. And not just perfect trust, but real trust. Enough trust that people believe that the law is not merely a weapon. a weapon for the powerful.
That's huge, Daniel, because once people begin to believe that justice is selectively enforced, the social contract begins breaking down. If one set of rules exists for the connected and another set's for the ordinary citizens, then the law stops looking like justice and starts looking like control.
A better America would be a country where accountability is not performative, where corruption is confronted, where abuse of power is confronted, where exploitation is confronted, where the poor are not over-policed, while the powerful are under-scrutinized.
Wow. Think about what you just said in what we're seeing today. And this applies across the board for corporate power, for political power, for institutional power, for cultural power, for religious power. Any system can become manipulative when it stops believing it should answer to truth.
Exactly, Dave. And justice also means access. Can ordinary people navigate the system? Can they afford representation? Can they understand their rights? Can they be heard before damage becomes permanent? These are not side questions. These are central questions. When justice becomes inaccessible, democracy starts becoming decorative.
A healthy United States would also know the difference between vengeance and justice. That matters because a lot of people talk about accountability when what they really want is destruction. But justice is not mob emotion. Justice is principle, consistency, evidence, due process, human dignity under pressure.
And that's how a nation keeps from becoming what it claims to oppose. Because once a society starts abandoning principle in order to defeat its enemies, it begins handing victory to manipulation.
So the America we should be striving for would not be soft on wrongdoing, but it also would not be drunk on punishment. It would be serious, measured, fair, and transparent enough that citizens could still believe in it. Now let's tackle one of the hardest ideas in this whole conversation, unity. Because people talk about unity all the time, but often they really mean compliance.
Or silence, or agree with me and call it peace. But that's not unity. That's pressure. A better United States would know how to hold together without forcing everybody to become the same. That means unity without uniformity, shared purpose without erased identity, common good without coerced conformity. People can have different backgrounds, different experiences, different convictions, and still belong to the same national project. That is not weakness. That is maturity. And I think that's one of the great tests before us. Can we build a country where people do not have to become identical in order to become invested in one another? Can we build a civic culture where disagreement does not automatically become contempt? Can we reject the lie that the only way to be strong is to dominate?
Because the domination has been marketed as strength for a long time. But domination's not the highest form of power. Self-governance is. Restraint is. Responsibility is. The ability to protect without dehumanizing, that is power. The strongest nation is not the one that can crush difference. It's the one that can carry difference without breaking apart.
And in our creation of the co-creation of our perfect vision of America, citizens would still be able to debate, still able to argue, still able to advocate for each other, still able to push, still able to protest, and still challenge. But underneath all of it, there would still be a shared conviction. We are not enemies because we are different.
That line needs to settle because the manipulation of division depends on convincing people that every disagreement is existential, but every difference is danger, that every opponent is a threat to your humanity. And once that story takes hold, it becomes easier to justify almost anything.
So a better nation would teach people how to contend without, corroding, how to argue without dehumanizing, how to stand firm without losing moral clarity. That doesn't mean weakness. That means civilization. You cannot build the perfect vision of a nation without talking about leadership, because leadership either sets the tone for health or gives permission for decay.
A better United States would have leaders who understand that public office is stewardship, not performance art, that power is a trust, not a throne, that leadership is service, not self-worship. And yes, that applies everywhere. Politics, business, religion, media, education, and the home.
A nation moves in the direction of what it rewards. If it rewards spectacle over substance, it gets more spectacle. If it rewards aggression over wisdom, it gets more aggression. If it rewards manipulation over integrity, it gets more manipulation. Whatever a country consistently excuses, it eventually becomes.
And in America, we should be building leaders would be strong, but their strength would show up as honesty under pressure, clarity in confusion, courage in difficulty, humility in correction, steadiness in crisis. They would not constantly inflame the public to protect themselves. They would calm, tell the truth, and lead.
And citizens would stop confusing charisma with character. That's part of the problem, too. A manipulative culture often falls in love with confidence that has no conscience, with boldness that has no ethics, with certainty that has no humility. A better nation would learn to ask deeper questions. Does this leader tell the truth? Does this leader divide to gain power? Does this leader serve the people or feed on them? Does this leader create conditions for dignity or merely conditions for applause?
That's a big one because the future of this country will not only be shaped by who speaks the loudest, it'll be shaped by whether the people develop the wisdom to stop rewarding destructive leadership patterns. Before we move into our closing stretch, let me invite you to go deeper with us. At Truthful Manipulation, we're not just talking about the world as it is, we're trying to help people see it clearly enough to live with truth, courage, and integrity inside it. Whether you're listening in your car, at home, or somewhere in the middle of a hard season, stay connected, follow the podcast, share the episode, and get the book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. Because awareness without integrity becomes another weapon, but awareness with integrity becomes a roadmap. And now back to our show. Daniel, let's bring this down to ground level. What would this country actually feel like if we were moving forward for all its citizens?
I think, firstly, it would feel less cruel and more safe, more softness. Would not be so weak. Yeah, less cruel. People would feel less disposable, less manipulated, less pushed to the edge for someone else's advantage.
It'd feel more stable. Parents would feel less afraid. Workers would feel less trapped. Young people would feel less cynical. And older people would feel less forgotten. Communities would feel less pitted against each other.
Yes, it feel more like a trustworthy environment. Not because everybody suddenly becomes perfect, but because enough of the system around people would begin behaving in ways that make trust rational again.
That line matters. Make trust rational again. Because right now, for a lot of people, distrust feels smarter than hope. And that's a dangerous place for a nation to live.
It would also feel more participatory, I think. People would not see citizenship as something you perform every 4 hours or every 4 years. They would see it as a calling, a responsibility, a daily investment in the moral shape of the country.
And maybe that's one of the deepest points in this whole episode. The perfect vision of the United States is not only about what the government does, it's about what the people become. You can't build a joint nation out of citizens who are committed to comfort but not to character.
Yeah, Dave, that means all of us have skin in this.
We all
How do
should
we
have skin
speak?
in this.
Yeah, how do we speak? How do we listen? How do we treat people we disagree with? How do we tell the truth when it costs us something? How do we resist manipulation without being the manipulators ourselves?
That question right there goes right to the center of who we are. Because if we want a healthier country, we're going to need healthier habits of soul, more courage, more honesty, more discipline, more compassion, more humanity, more accountability.
If we're seriously going to build this vision, then we also have to name what must be rejected, not vaguely, clearly.
We must reject the manipulation of fear. We must reject the monetization of division. We must reject the cheapening of truth. And we must reject the worship of power without ethics. We must reject the idea that cruelty proves strength. And we must reject the lie that some citizens matter more than others.
We must reject political idolatry, institutional idolatry, cultural idolatry, religious idolatry. Any system that asks us to surrender conscience in exchange for belonging is trying to own us, not serve us.
We must reject numbness too. The quiet surrender where people say, well, this is just how it is. No. A nation declines when its people stop imagining better and start adjusting themselves permanently to dysfunction. Normalization is one of manipulation's most powerful weapons.
And we have to reject hopelessness, because hopelessness makes people available for all kinds of destructive leadership, destructive movements, and destructive fantasies. Hopeless people can be persuaded that burning everything down is wisdom, but it isn't.
No. And false hope isn't the answer either. Not fantasy, not denial, not branding. The answer is courageous hope. Hope with eyes open. Hope tied to truth. Hope disciplined by responsibility. Hope that works. So, Daniel,
Yeah.
if you have to paint it plainly, the perfect vision of the United States moving forward for all its citizens, what does it look like?
Dave, I think it looks like a nation where truth still has authority, where dignity is not rationed, where opportunity is reachable, where education teaches discernment, where justice is trusted, where health and safety are not luxuries, where leadership means service, where diversity does not destroy belonging, where freedom and responsibility still know each other, and where the average citizen can look at the future and say, I may not control everything, but I still believe there is a place for me in this community, in this country.
That's strong. And I'll add this. It looks like a country that stops asking, how do we win over them? And starts asking, how do we build something worthy of all of us? It looks like honesty. It looks like order with justice. It looks like compassion with standards. It looks like ambitions with conscience. And it looks like citizenship with courage. It looks like a nation finally mature enough to stop feeding on its own people.
So now we leave the question with you. What kind of United States do you believe is still possible? What kind of country do you want your children to inherit? What kind of culture are you helping to create with your words and your choices and your values and your courage?
Because the future's not only being decided in Washington, it's being decided in homes, in schools, in churches, in businesses, in conversations, in moments where people choose truth over convenience, integrity over image, responsibility over outrage, humanity over manipulation.
And that's where the real change begins. You know, Dave, when you said in the churches, I would say in the churches, in the mosques, in the synagogues, in the temples. Yes. Not just about the where the power is. It's not just about the power. It's where there's the people. The people matter. It's not just merely in the slogans, but in the substance. It's not merely in vision statements, but in lived character.
This has been Truthful Manipulation. I'm Dave.
And I'm Daniel.
And today we hope we didn't just ask you to imagine a better country. We hope we asked you to help become the kind of citizens who can help build one. Because the perfect vision of the United States will never be built by manipulation. It'll be built by truth, courage, dignity, and integrity. We'll see you next time. Please comment on today's show at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. Don't forget to pick up a copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. It'll help you see these manipulations in your life. Don't forget to share this podcast with somebody that you know so we can expand this community at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com, and together we can make America move forward to a better community for all our citizens. Have a great week.